I asked you on Twitter earlier today, at LateKickJosh, follow if you're not already, what is your opinion of Lincoln Riley? And then I just left. I just went to the gym. And boy, when I came back, it was waiting for me. I had like 1,500 comments. I did want to get to this one first, though. This is the kind of stuff I come out of the gym to. So I ask, what is your opinion of Lincoln Riley? Now, I know if you're listening on podcast, you're going to think maybe there's more to this story. There's not. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can see it on your screen. I ask, what is your opinion of Lincoln Riley? Question mark. End of tweet, or so I thought. Grateful Trojan hits me back and says, you getting scared, Josh? You trying to cook up some negativity towards Lincoln? Like you've said, when SC is rolling, it's unstoppable. You trying to prevent that? Allow me to share my thoughts on Lincoln Riley. I think he's a phenomenal offensive mind. I think he's very good at acquiring talent. 6 of his 7 classes have landed in the top 10 in the combined recruiting rankings. That means portal plus recruiting. He has coached 3 of the last 6 Heisman Trophy winners. No one's ever done that before. Notice how negative I am towards Lincoln Riley so far. Grateful Trojan. Ungrateful viewer is what Grateful Trojan is. Something tells me he doesn't watch the show, by the way. Something tells me that was a Twitter special. He's got the 3rd most college football playoff appearances, period. Saban and Dabo. Those are the only ones who have been there more. Of course, there is the downside. There's the glass half empty of what he's done once he's gotten there. But I'm going to get to that in a second. So anyway, I'm parsing through all the replies. We're still not through all of them. So I got a lot of people who were willing to say he's a great offensive mind, don't think he's necessarily arrived as an elite coach because of the defensive issues. That's totally fair. He's also young. He's also very young still as a head coach. But then there was the crowd that said he's overrated. I think we've had this conversation before, but we haven't had it recently. So let's just talk about this. Because I know a lot of you feel this way about Lincoln Riley. Just off the cuff. What do you think about him? Boom. Oh, he's overrated. Okay, well, I humbly disagree, but I don't even think this is opinion. I think this is just kind of, it can be factually nailed down. So you say Lincoln Riley's overrated, huh? Well, my first question to anyone who says that to me is always, what is he rated? For him to be overrated, you first need to tell me, what is he rated? Because people come to me and say, oh, he's no Nick Saban. Well, no one's got him rated above Nick Saban. Or he's not Kirby Smart. Well, no one has him rated above Kirby. Who is he rated above that is better than him? Because I look at all these lists, and if we were to internalize one, I'd put him in like the 5 or 6 position, somewhere like that. We would have him perfectly rated. From my mind's eye, I would have him perfectly rated. Yeah, but. That's where it goes next. Yeah, but. Go ahead. Continue. One of the most valuable weapons you have against people who say Lincoln Riley is overrated is ask him, well, what is he rated? And then once you start seeing they don't really have a logical foundation to stand on, then you say, continue. Just let them talk. Let them dig that grave. And they're going to say something like, yeah, but he hasn't won playoff games. And you just sit there and nod your head. I know. Yeah, but his defenses have not been good. Continue. They think that's a gotcha moment. Like they think, well, aren't you gonna say something? No, I'm not. I already knew all that about him. Believe it or not, I watched the game too. I know all that about him. I know his defenses have left a lot to be desired. I know that he's gotten either beaten or in some cases humbled and beaten in playoff games. Did you miss the part at the beginning though? Did you miss the part where he's in the playoffs? Did you miss the part where the dude has literally won double-digit games every year he's been a head coach, except for the COVID year? He won 9 that year, and they played fewer in the league that he was in. You're warping standards is what you're doing because you don't like him. Most people who are making this argument about him, really in their core, they don't like him, which you're totally free to feel about him. But there are coaches out there I don't like. Lincoln Riley's not necessarily one of them. I got no problem with him. But there are coaches out there I don't like, but at the same time, if you want to be logical and smart about them, you put your own personal emotion to the side and you apply the same standard. You use the same scale. I use the same scale for all of them who have roughly equal resources. So if you coach at Southern Cal or Oklahoma or Georgia or Florida, you're in the top level. You know, you're in the top 5 or so % of resources in college football. I'm going to judge you on the same scale. And on that scale, it looks a little something like this. Saban's up there in a league of his own. Smart, rapidly ascending, right near the top right now. Dabo Swinney has carved out himself a spot right near the top. So you start listing those guys, just purely in terms of result. And then you get down to a next tier. And in that next tier, you're not going to have perfection. You're going to have plenty of room for someone to not be great, not have great defensive teams, for someone to not have won in the playoff. That's why they're not 1, 2, or 3. That's the whole point. But really what it comes down to in a lot of cases is you're warping the logic because at the end of the day, you really just don't like him. And if you don't like him, just say you don't like him, which leads me to my next point. A ton of you just flat out said you don't like him today. Now, given recent events, I'm not going to read the most popular response in my tweets, but it involved a certain hot current issue that's happening about 2 some odd miles beneath the Atlantic Ocean. And that's as far as I'm going to go there. But you know who you are, and you know what you said, and it won't be repeated here. Most people I have found that have a personal issue with him are Oklahoma fans. This is not a mystery. That is not surprising. I don't blame you guys one bit. It's your program. He bailed on you. He abandoned you. He himself has taken some blame for how he handled it, although I don't think he regrets the decision, period. Maybe just the way the exit was handled. You guys feel however you want to. I'd probably feel the same way if I were you. I could never fault you for feeling the way you do. But outside of Oklahoma circles, what I've noticed or what I have found is there may be some people who don't care for Lincoln Riley. There may be some people who love him. But by and large, I think he gets graded more for his results or lack thereof in, big leverage moments, postseason moments, than he does for leaving Oklahoma. That was a huge story this time last year, obviously, but I think it's sunk kind of back into the back of the room for most non-Oklahoma fans. I think Lincoln Riley becomes a victim of what I call the hype cycle in college football. See it all the time. It's happened with him. Here's what that looks like. Hype someone up or hype a team up, and then that team achieves, but they don't achieve quite at the level that you hyped them up to achieve at. And then instead of doing the right thing and blaming yourself because you were the genesis of the hype, you blame the person or the team, or in this case, Lincoln Riley, the coach, who didn't make you look good. So if I were to pick SC to win the national title this year and they flame out in the semifinals, it's their fault. Lincoln Riley choked. No, you made a bad pick. Maybe that's the way it went down. But there aren't very many articles out there that start with, boy, I was wrong. I was an idiot when it came to Lincoln Riley. It's a lot of Lincoln Riley choked, Lincoln Riley's overrated, never bothering to mention who rated him in the first place. Also, what I'm learning, the more and more as I go through these replies, is a solid 60 to 65% of college football is about to be really shook whenever his teams finally do figure out defense. I say whenever because I do believe that will happen. I've been on record ever since he was at OU as thinking he'll eventually win a national title. Maybe more than one, but at least one I think is in his future. Let me be delicate with this, immunity. It's not a foregone conclusion they'll ever get defense figured out, though, is what I want to say. I was talking to a pretty high-profile defensive coordinator recently, and we were talking about several coaches, several programs. This is not a West Coast guy. It's not someone that you guys will face this year at USC. But what he said kind of struck me. He said, when you're looking at these places where they're not performing well defensively, the mistake college football fans make, or media folks make sometimes, is you think that the hire of a new coordinator is the solution to the problem. And he said 9 times out of 10, you're going to get the same results even when a new coordinator comes in, because sometimes it's not a coordinator problem, it's a culture problem. And when you think culture, most of the time you think, oh, guys getting in a lot of trouble, guys getting arrested, 15-yard unsportsmanlike penalties, play after play. It's not always that. Sometimes it's a lot more subtle. There is a certain way that you have to build your organization. There's a certain way you have to go about your business. There's a certain way you have to practice. And there's a certain athlete that you have to recruit to play high-caliber defense. But it all gets embedded in an overall culture. You've got to have a culture that lends itself to you playing high-level defense. This coach I'm talking about is a very, very good defensive coach. He said, I don't know that I could go in there and make any difference right now, because from where I sit, it looks like Lincoln Riley's overall culture may be the issue. He may be dead right and me be right as well. For all I know, Lincoln Riley has assessed himself and has assessed his program or his modus operandi and arrived at the same conclusion. We don't know that. And if I were him, I wouldn't tell you even if I did figure that out. That's the easy part, though, relatively speaking. Figuring out that you may have a little tweak in the culture you need to make, or maybe a 30% overhaul in the culture to lend itself to you playing more physical football, being a better tackling team, and ultimately playing better defense. They're not there. They never have been there under him. Will they be there one day? I still believe yes. A lot of you don't believe that. But I will tell you, the college football public seems to be ill-equipped for when Lincoln Riley does get defense figured out. They don't have to play top 5 defense. They have to be opportunistic enough, just good enough, take the ball away like they did last year, and also mix in some stops. I don't know, a tackle every now and then would be nice. He's really good. Lincoln Riley's really, really good. He's not the best in the sport. No one's ever said he is. If they say that, he is overrated. But until then, I don't think he's really overrated.